Today's podcast is sponsored by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. Remember, there is strength in numbers. Join today at amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. First, I want to begin this podcast by giving my condolences to the families of the fallen officers this weekend and praying for the other officer who is in critical condition. On Friday night, New York City rookie officer Jason Rivera, he had 22, he was killed after being shot in the head. He was on a domestic call dispute with his partner, 27-year-old officer Wilbert Mora. And Wilbert Mora is fighting for his life now at the hospital. It's a tragedy. And the reason I bring this up is because there was another incident, a terrible one this weekend on Friday night as well. The first death during Operation Lone Star here in Texas. Very young DPS officer, Special Agent Anthony Salas. He was only 37 years old. He ended up dying Saturday at a San Antonio hospital from the injuries he sustained in a U.S. Border Patrol crash Friday night near Eagle Pass, Texas. They were in pursuit of illegals. This is just for all of you out there to remind you that our officers put their lives on the line every single day, like our military and our intelligence officials, but our police officers. Our local officers are right on the front lines defending our families every single day, and our federal officers along the border, and to the Texas Department of Public Safety that does the tough work every single night. I've been out with them so many nights. They really make the sacrifices so that we can be safer. I don't want to forget their families. I hope you all pray for their families. Pray for all of our officers. We've got these crazy Democrats out there, you know, that want to defund our police force, defund our ICE, our Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. They want to defund our Border Patrol. They just want to defund the whole nation so that it's just completely controlled by radicals and criminals. And you think I'm joking? Just look at what happened in San Francisco, in California, the whole state. I'm not going to just point at San Francisco. I was in Los Angeles, spent a lot of time there, and saw what was happening there in LA, in San Bernardino. It was just a nightmare. Look at New York now. Look at across the country. Look at Portland, Oregon. Look at Baltimore. Look at what's going on there. Look at Chicago. A poor 8-year-old girl lost her life, shot in the head this weekend, right? It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to deal with. I'm going to be talking about that and more on this show today. I have a very, very special guest. I've got New York Congressman Lee Zeldin. He'll join me to discuss his campaign for governor of New York. Governor of New York. How important is this? You know, we got rid of Andrew Cuomo and his disgusting Andrew Cuomo. Goodbye. See you forever, Chris Cuomo. Hope they have fun somewhere in a house where we don't have to see them anymore. And now we've got, you know, Cuomo 2.0, like people say, or worse, in New York Governor Kathy Hochul. And we'll talk about that. But can a Republican win in the blue state? Huh? This is a deep blue state. Can he win? I think so. We'll also get to his thoughts on some of the big debates in Washington, and we'll be looking at the insane government policy, guys, that allows illegals in this country to use the warrants, their own warrants, for their own arrests as ID at our airports. You could thank Jenny Tear for that. Please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saracarter.com, saracarter.com. And while you are there, sign up for our email list so you don't get shadow banned. This is how you and I will stay in touch. Folks, I want to tell you first about a great American company and one that I absolutely love, and that is MyPillow. Why? Because I get everything for my household there. My towels. I get my towels. Everyone loves them. I have guests at my house every weekend. My kids are coming. My friends are coming to visit. They're like, I brag about this. I've got my towels. I've got my pillows. I've got my dogs love me because they've got my pillow beds, doggy beds. We've got my slippers. I mean, just about everything you can imagine. My Pillow even makes the most amazing Giza dream sheets. Amazing. Soft to the touch. They look great on the bed. And look, it's an American company run by an American patriot. That's all I need to say. And right now you can get 40% off the new My Slippers. I want you to think about this. 40% off to be totally comfortable and to be able to walk in and out of the house anytime you want in the coolest, either moccasin or slip-on style, my slippers that we have. Variety of colors and sizes, so you don't need to get stuck with just one color. They're made with quality leather suede and the exclusive 3-tier cushioning system. MyPillow patented fill, impact gel, and memory foam. For a limited time, Mike is offering 40% off all these My Slippers. Go to mypillow.com. I want you to click on the radio listeners square, enter promo code Carter. That's real easy, CARTER, or call 1-800-685-7221. While you're there, take advantage of the deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, and the MyPillow towel set. You can only save, though, 40% on the new My Slippers with the promo code Carter. So call 1-800-685-7221 or visit mypillow.com. So, big story. I want to thank Jenny Terror. She worked for me, for 3.5 years. Love you, Jenny, and love the work that you're doing out there. She's working with the Daily Caller. Jenny broke this phenomenal story. It's an exclusive story. It's at the Daily Caller. If you go to the Daily Caller, you'll see it there. I also brag about it at saracarter.com. But arrest warrants count as ID for illegal migrants at airport security. TSA confirmed this. They confirmed this. I want you to think about this. You and I can't rarely travel. I mean, I got to pay for TSA pre-screening and all of that extra stuff just so I can get through the line faster because I travel so much. I mean, they basically have my every biometric of my life inside the airport, right? If you choose to give them that. I probably shouldn't have done it. I'm going to hear from you guys, but I did because I'm traveling a lot and I really want to get home to my family when I'm out on assignment, and I really want to get to the assignment. But right now, and I've told you this before, I'm in McAllen, and I've seen this over and over again, either in McAllen or different parts along the border, different airports. When I'm out there working on assignment, everybody carrying their manila yellow envelope. These are the illegal migrants who have been giving passage into the United States. And it says, I do not speak English, please help me. And none of them use photo ID. For the most part, they just go straight through with whatever paperwork that is handed to them as they're going through the process. These are the ones that just turn themselves into Border Patrol. Well, right now, it has been discovered that some of them who have arrest warrants are using that as valid ID as they travel into our country, being allowed to travel into our country illegally and moving about in our country illegally. Something, by the way, no American can really do. I guarantee you that an American citizen with an arrest warrant and no photo ID cannot just walk up to a Delta counter and be like, hey, here's my arrest warrant. I'd like to get on a flight to New York City. Boom. No, that's not going to happen. You're not going to get on the flight, right? You're not going to be able to be like, oh, hey, I just wanted to get into the halls of Congress. Thought I'd show you my arrest warrant. Illegal trespass, drug trafficking, whatever. Can I show you that and get in? Without a picture. I'm just holding random. My name is Jenny Terror. And I'd like to get in with just this piece of paper. It won't happen. But it will happen if you're an illegal migrant. TSA is like, oh, we got to move you straight through. So the Transportation Security Administration disclosed to a congressional office that illegal migrants flying without proper identification can use an arrest warrant as an alternate form of identification when presenting to airport security. How conveniently nice for them. Responding to Republican of Texas. This is, by the way, Lance Gooden's office deserves big credit for this. They have been working on this forever. On December 15th, the inquiry. So Lance Gooden puts in this inquiry, right? Wants to know what's going on about these illegal migrants flying across the country. And TSA administrator, David Pekoski, explained that certain Department of Homeland Security documents may be considered acceptable forms of alternate identification for non-citizens, including a warrant for arrest of alien or a warrant for removal or deportation. So they're just using these. We would never be able to use this. And I want you to think about the removals, because this isn't just always about some innocent person that's traveling into the country that maybe was removed, but nobody really realized how amazing they were. And so now they're back illegally, and then they're going to fight for it. These are people that were literally removed from the country for a reason. A lot of them. And just like anywhere in the world, there are good people and there are bad people. And we have seen what has happened. And I'm going to be talking to Congressman Lee Zeldin about New York City's mayor's plans on having illegals vote, because that's just insanity. That's just insanity. But I want you to think about what's happening in our country and why we are just opening the floodgates, right? Opening the floodgates. We don't even know who these people are, the majority of them. I'm telling you the truth. This isn't just about the people that are turning themselves in, but the gotaways, the people that are trying to avoid law enforcement, which is the reason why the Texas Department of Public Safety, along with the Border Patrol, is continuously patrolling the border, continuously working with Border Patrol, because in the state of Texas, they don't want this to happen. But they have the federal government working against them. And in the state of Texas, they have suffered their first major loss of life. A young 37-year-old DPS special agent, Anthony Salas, who died Saturday at a San Antonio hospital from injuries that he sustained while he was trying to stop with the Border Patrol an illegal entry into the United States near Eagles Pass, Texas. People that are moving fentanyl into our country, drugs, other types of contraband, moving people that are potentially a national security risk to our nation. This is the kind of work that they are doing. Remember, we have caught terrorists at that border, people associated with terrorist organizations. And by God, I bet you there are people that have come into this country. I hope not, but I bet you they have, that are connected to terrorist organizations. I pray to God, not a sleeper cell, right? Waiting for orders from overseas to target one of our cities. This man lost his life defending our nation, defending the state of Texas, while the federal government is taking the law and stepping on it, tying the hands of our law enforcement officers, really threatening the lives of American citizens on the federal level. It is a complete and utter disaster. And the only job that President Biden has to do, the only real job that is required of this president, who, by the way, can't even string 3 sentences together, is to protect the national security of the United States. But we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that at all. It terrifies me. Every time I look at my daughter, every time I think of my children, I think of my neighbors, I think of the kids in school, I think of, every time I think of that, I think to myself, God, I hope there's not another September 11th. I hope that this administration hasn't dropped the ball so much so, or that we end up in a war. We see war break out in Ukraine, in Europe. They're talking about it right now with the Russians, that this administration has failed so miserably that it has shifted the trajectory, the great trajectory that President Trump had, right? We were on a much better trajectory. Now I'm afraid. And I'm afraid the clock is ticking. And I'm really nervous about that. Let me tell you this. There was an Arizona rancher, it's at SaraACarter.com. That's SaraACarter.com, who saw a 2,400%, you guys, increase of illegal immigrants trafficking on his property. I know John Ladd. I've interviewed him before. He's amazing. He's a wonderful human being. And he really cares about this country. And I remember talking to him before where he was just like, hey, I don't even approach these people anymore, because he's an older man. He's like, I'm not going to sit there and put my life and my family's life in danger. He doesn't even know who's crossing. There were so many times that John Ladd and other ranchers like him would call for Border Patrol and nobody would show up for a while because they had no one in the area. They don't know who's crossing their property. Remember when I was down at the border all the time, and there were times where I would come to the border, would run into people not just from Guatemala, not just from Honduras, but from other nations. People crossing the border from Romania, from China, from Pakistan, from other parts of Africa. Small nations, large nations. I don't even know how some of them make their way to the United States because they've got to get all the way first to South America. Then they've got to travel up through Colombia, through the jungles, make their way all the way here in some very dangerous areas. And some of them are just dangerous people who take the passage with other dangerous people. So when you think about the officer that died here, the DPS officer that lost his life, that's what he was thinking about when they're going after these aliens, these illegals. They're thinking, man, maybe this is somebody that's going to do damage to our nation. This could be somebody who doesn't want to be caught for a reason. This could be somebody who's bringing in, drugs to kill our children. I want you to think about that. Border Patrol is only able to catch roughly 30% of the illegal aliens that are crossing, right? And that's on a good day. You guys, that's on a good day. They don't even know how many people cross. Even in Arizona, this is what Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels, he said this to the Epic Times. These people cannot turn themselves in. They will be deported. These are the bad people. These are the bad people. We're dealing with the worst of the worst. And he knows it. And I'm sorry to say, but this DPS officer, this isn't the end of it. We're going to see more die. We're going to see more people die. I have a special tonight on Sean Hannity, and I'll be talking about that on the podcast, future podcasts as well. But I have somebody who wants to talk, who feels that this administration has basically pulled the rug out from under them, has basically turned their job into a joke, that working for the DHS, they're not protecting anyone. We really got to listen to what our officers, our Border Patrol agents, and our ICE officers are telling us. There is a real danger on the border. Real danger on the border. We'll talk about that with Congressman Zeldin as well. I wanted to say really quickly, we're going to talk to him a little bit about Manhattan's new liberal district attorney. I think we should focus on that more in our show because we've seen what the DAs have been capable of across the country and why George Soros has been so adamant at funding these races to put in really liberal, really crazy Marxist-like district attorneys in place. And there's a story out right now that Manhattan's new liberal district attorney on Thursday walked back a memo that went public. He sent it to staff earlier this month, calling for the decriminalization, non-prosecution of crimes, including marijuana possession, turnstile jumping, trespassing, resisting arrest, interfering with an arrest, and prostitution. And I'm sorry, but it goes on and on and on. And let me tell you something. You think, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. Some marijuana sales. And it's not about that. It's about the fact that you'll have people that actually commit very serious crimes. And then when they're prosecuted for something like criminal trespass because the prosecution doesn't really have the space, doesn't really have the time, doesn't want to prosecute against them. So they'll create these other so-called law-breaking, these crimes that are not even associated with the actual crime that was committed. And that's a big deal. So we're going to be talking to Congressman Zeldin about that. We're going to be talking about his run for governor of New York. And I'm going to tell you, you do not want to miss this. Here we go. We've got Congressman Lee Zeldin from the great state of New York. He's going to be running for governor of New York. I want to also mention that he's an Iraq war veteran and an active lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. What a great guy. First, thank you so much, Congressman Zeldin, for joining me today here at the Sarah Carter Show. It's been a while since I've had you on the show, but I want to thank you for making the time in your deeply busy schedule to join us here today.
Well, Sarah, it's great to be with you. And I'll tell you, as a member of Congress, these last few years especially, and seeing so much happen inside the halls of Congress that weren't making its way outside to the American public, I can't tell you how often, time and again, the truth was getting out through your voice, through your journalism, through your different mediums that you went after to make sure that the truth, the facts were getting out there. And your listeners are very fortunate to be able to tune into you, because I'll tell you firsthand from the inside of those halls of Congress during these last few years, there are few people, very, very few people you'd find in the media with the access, the answers, and the truth like you put out there. And I'm just personally, as a proud American, grateful for what you do.
Well, I got to tell you, the feeling is mutual. I know that you are up against quite a bit in New York State. You know, the Democrats have dominated New York State for so long, and you are now going to run for governor. And I got to tell you, everyone out there that's listening, there is no better person that I know that fights for his constituents the way that Lee Zeldin does in New York State. And I got to tell you, first, congratulations on your gubernatorial run. You have actually raised quite a bit of funding, considering that this is New York State. You have a momentum that I don't think any Republican has ever seen before in the state, considering, especially right now with everything that's been going on. Can you talk a little bit about that momentum, and why do you think you've got the wind at your back right now?
Well, first off, it really feels like last stand time. And for me, I don't believe that losing is an option. And I'm seeing it in Washington with one party rule there. We have one party rule in Albany and Washington and in New York City as well. The Democrats, with their one party rule, in so many different ways, are attacking wallet, safety, freedom, our kids' education. And we have to swing this pendulum back. That means retaking the House. That means taking back the Senate, but also in our state capitals, winning races like in New York. And you and I have off air talked about this. I believe, my opinion, that where Republicans were on their heels and losing in places like Georgia in the past, it is time, November 8, 22, to see Democrats on their heels and losing in places like New York instead. People are in many ways hitting their breaking point, and it's last stand time for everybody. And I want to do my part. I'm feeling the momentum. I'm all in, and losing is not an option.
Thank God, because what we're seeing in New York, I got to tell you, the rest of the country, even here in Texas, there's a certain sense of like, this is it. We've got to hold tight. We are in a battle for our principles. And, you know, it's an election battle, not a physical battle, but in a battle for sustaining the principles that this nation was based on. And I'm watching New York City, and Alvin Bragg, for example. Let's talk about Alvin Bragg, you know, the newly elected Manhattan District Attorney, you know, and what he's been doing there, giving illegals the right to vote in New York. I mean, is this absolutely insane?
Yeah, you take these recent policies that have come out. Alvin Bragg, he comes into office, new district attorney in Manhattan Borough, and says, with this new memo across the board, all different kinds of crimes he will not enforce. All sorts of other crimes he was going to reduce. Prosecutors, judges, law enforcement having the handcuffs on them as opposed to the handcuffs going on cops. In New York State, they have cashless bail, where you are seeing people immediately going out and committing additional offenses, shocked that they're released as quickly as they do. Judges that don't have discretion to weigh dangerousness and flight risk and past criminal history and more in setting bail. They signed a new law, Kathy Hochul did, called Less is More, where they're releasing criminals out early. When she was signing it, she released 191 people from Rikers Island prison. A whole bunch of them immediately went out, committed additional offenses, and got rearrested. You also brought up on another front, New York City, the city council passing a new law, the mayor signing it to allow 800,000 non-citizens to vote in our elections. I believe in the principle of one person, one vote is a principle, a right that belongs to U.S. citizens only. And when you provide the right to vote to non-citizens, you are diluting one person, one vote, which in my opinion is unconstitutional and illegal, and it should be overturned by the courts.
I agree with you. Kathy Hochul, I wanted to bring this up. I should have probably brought this up at the beginning. I did talk about it at the top of my show. God rest the poor officer, Jason Rivera, 22. He was killed Friday night. New York City police officer was shot in the head. His partner, 27-year-old officer Wilbert Mora, is still fighting for his life. So this is a very dangerous situation for him right now. This was over a domestic dispute that happened Friday night that they reported to, they got called out to, putting their lives on the line like all officers across our nation. I'm going to play a clip right now. This is New York interim governor Kathy Hochul. Listen to Kathy Hochul, what she has to say after the officers are reported shot.
Our hearts and prayers are with the families and the members of the NYPD, but also it's a resounding call to action. We have to do more to fight the scourge of illegal guns on our streets, and we need Washington teaming up with us, teaming up with locals to get it done. These guns, despite our tough laws here in the state of New York, and we're proud of them, they're coming in from other states. They're flooding our streets. And I have pledged the resources of the New York State Police to become embedded with NYPD and others to help them. In fact, we've tripled funding for this gun interdiction effort because they're coming in from Virginia and Maryland and coming in from Pennsylvania to our very streets. And we have to do whatever we can to protect our neighborhoods.
She doesn't blame the criminals. She doesn't blame, in fact, she blames other states. And this is a governor who actually, like you had already mentioned, is releasing people back onto the streets to commit more crimes, low bail. You've got Bragg. I've already talked about him. The DA's office avoids seeking jail time for offenses like shoplifting, soliciting prostitution, possession of small quantities of weed, by the way, which this is like they're trying to minimize what they're really doing. They reduce a lot of times the charges that are much more than that. They reduce those charges many times to small quantities of weed or, criminal trespass when it's domestic violence or something, just to release people so that they don't end up in prison. This is absolutely insanity. And this is the woman that is representing the governor of New York State.
Yeah, many people are starting to say that Andrew Cuomo 2.0 is worse than the original. I totally agree with that. Kathy Hochul has been silent on Alvin Bragg's new memo. I, as governor, would exercise my constitutional right. It's in the New York State Constitution. The governor of New York can remove a district attorney who refuses to enforce the law. I, as governor right now, would be pursuing removal of Alvin Bragg. Kathy Hochul is pathetically silent on it altogether. I want to repeal cashless bail. She's not doing anything about it. As a matter of fact, she comes in as governor last August, and she picks Brian Benjamin, who's a state senator, as her new lieutenant governor. Brian Benjamin wasn't just a champion of the defund the police movement. He was the champion of the defund the police movement inside of the New York State legislature. In New York City, over $1 billion they pursued successfully to defund out of the NYPD's budget. That was back in 2020. While they might feel it's successful in their effort to defund the police, unfortunately, the consequence is also you are making the streets less safe. And unfortunately, Kathy Hochul is actually using her power to make it worse, not better. These guns that she refers to as illegal is a clue word for the rest of us to realize there are already laws on the books. So what new law are you going to pursue to make a gun more illegal? And as you pointed out, no blame for the criminal? Give me a break. They are trying to just, instead of accepting any accountability, responsibility, they just want someone else to blame somewhere else, as opposed to any self-reflection, any effort here locally to do more to have our streets controlled by law-abiding citizens, by cops, by judges, by prosecutors, and have a rule of law that we're upholding. And it's all about political gamesmanship and what their political consultants tell them so they don't get any more blame. It's not leadership.
Well, it isn't leadership. And Congressman, why do you think that this is happening? I mean, if I was in charge of a state, I'm a governor of a state, I want to make sure that my citizens are safe, that when my children walk to and from school, that they are safe, that that people are prosecuted for the crimes that they commit. That, I remember when New York was safe, right? I remember when it was really bad. And then I remember Rudy Giuliani, and I remember, Bernard Kerik, and I remember the whole change that took place. And when I could walk like 5 blocks in New York City, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is nothing like it was. And now New York City, and the state of New York for that matter, is reverting back to the past. Why would these leaders in New York, well, first of all, why would Kathy Hochul not remove this DA? Why would Kathy Hochul be so open to turning the state upside down and on its head?
Yeah, and she won't even comment on it, let alone actually taking bold action to do something about it. The reason why is because of their fear of their activist far left base. And the far left is taking over more and more of the party. And Kathy Hochul has a Democratic Party primary coming up this June. Jumaane Williams is the New York City public advocate. Mm-hmm. That position is kind of, in a way, like a number 2 mayor. If something happened to the mayor, the New York City public advocate would become the mayor. Well, now Jumaane Williams wants to run a primary against Kathy Hochul for governor. Jumaane Williams is from New York City, where a lot of that Democratic Party primary base is at. He is a minority member of the community, and that is an influential voting bloc in the Democratic Party primary base, and he has the creds with the far left of the party. Kathy Hochul is scared of all of these people because what is most important in Kathy Hochul is getting Kathy Hochul as many votes as possible from her far left because she wants to win that primary.
But let's talk about this. We're seeing the poll numbers, independents across the country, and even in New York, are sick and tired of what's happening to our nation. I mean, the lowest poll rating ever. President Biden. I mean, it's literally, he is being destroyed. Even MSNBC has openly talked about how this is the worst year for this Democratic president. And I mean, and that's saying a lot, except for Rachel Maddow. She kind of like always makes excuses for Biden and lives in like some kind of, I don't know, illusionary world. But right now, the Democrats are really facing a backlash, a giant backlash. Do you think that it's enough? It's enough given that you have this momentum now. And I believe you'll have the support of the NYPD officers and everybody else. I mean, do you believe it's going to be enough to take New York from blue to red?
Absolutely. I would not be in this race otherwise. I'm not in this campaign to finish in second. Our fundraising, we raised not just $8.4 million since getting in the race, which is the most that any Republican statewide candidate in New York has raised in 2 decades, but it came from 34,000 donations. The grassroots support that's coming in is powerful. Somebody sends in a $2 donation. I don't discount that. That comes with a vote, comes with 5, 10, 20 votes. These people are pouring their heart and soul, and they're not just coming from Republicans. It's coming from that, Asian American parent who might be a loyal liberal Democrat in Flushing, Queens, who cares more about their kids' education. It might be coming from that black pastor and the congregants in Sunnyside, Queens, or the Hispanics in the South Bronx who care more about the quality of education of their kids and safety on their streets than they do about party loyalty. As far as this president goes, I don't even think his number is at a floor right now because he's not up to the task. He is, it's with every challenge that is presented in front of him going forward, not just for President Biden, but the team around him, they are proving to just not being up to the job. And unfortunately, that's not good for all of us who absolutely love our country. But if you're analyzing November 8, 22, that means that this pendulum that's already swung is going to swing even further. And I believe that we will have the biggest Republican wave of our lifetime. I'm all in. And as I said at the beginning of this answer, I'm not in this race to come in second.
Right. And I couldn't agree with you more. I'm watching it and I'm thinking the only thing that can interrupt this pendulum swing is another kind of crazy black swan event like we saw with COVID-19. I wanted to ask you quickly, because you and I have talked about this before. I've had you on the show. We've talked about anti-Semitism and, the issues, especially in the United States and even overseas, dealing with that. and confronting that. And as a congressman, a Jewish congressman, Texas, we saw what happened in the synagogue. Thank God nobody lost their lives. But we also saw the FBI very hesitant in the beginning to call this an anti-Semitic action, an attack by a terrorist on the synagogue. Do you see this as part of that same kind of mentality with the Democrats? I mean, every time we see Democrats coming in or, into office and everything, it's like very polarizing. And sometimes we also see them kind of back off from calling a spade a spade.
That's right. It's about calling a spade a spade. The facts were right in front of us. The FBI was putting out their statement, and the entire country paying attention to what's going on. They're all saying, what are you doing? Why aren't you calling out what is clearly a targeted attack of a synagogue? Do you think it's just a coincidence that they end up holding hostage a rabbi and these others? I mean, really? You are supposed to be setting the standard of competency, and you utilize facts to form conclusions and assumptions, and you put words together smartly. I get all of that, but this was, in a way, eroding their credibility by not calling a spade a spade. I also, while I'm very critical of the way that this person was even able to get access into the United States, the signs were there. I'm critical of the words that were spoken, as you and I just pointed out. At the same time, I am so incredibly grateful, proud, and impressed by the local law enforcement on the ground, able to end this situation without anybody, any of these hostages being harmed. So when we offer up our criticism, our transparency, our accountability as it relates to law enforcement, as we've seen time and again, it's come at the highest levels of the DOJ and FBI that we end up criticizing for not doing what's right, but the rank and file are filled with amazing men and women who selflessly do an amazing job at high risk, and I can't possibly thank them and be more impressed by them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of it has to do with the official position. You're never looking at just the boots on the ground, the rank and file that are doing their job. It's always the politics at the higher levels, right? Of whether it's the FBI or the DOJ, or you're looking at other law enforcement, the DEA. And that's always where, that messaging gets convoluted and mixed up. I was going to ask you because Virginia was a good example of a big switch, right? Going from blue to red. And with Governor Youngkin winning that election. And I mean, a lot of that had to do with Loudoun County as well. Fairfax, a number of failures of the former governor especially when it comes to critical race theory, and also this idea of parents, being domestic terrorists. And I think that was a big backlash too. Do you, see those same kind of extremist kind of accusations and also the behavior of the left, as far as like Democrats? This isn't our old Democrat, right? Our father's old Democratic Party. This is a very different type of Democratic Party. Do you think that is also an issue that resonates with voters in New York State as well, that they're going to be looking at all of that?
Absolutely. November 2nd, a lot flipped in New York. Nassau and Suffolk County District Attorney, Nassau County Executive, Suffolk County Legislature, New York City Council seats flipped. Towns across the rest of the state all going from blue to red. On November 2nd, everyone was paying attention to a huge win for the Virginia governor's race, but it was happening with these local races all across the state of New York. And it's not just from red Republican conservative counties. We're also hearing it from blue liberal Democrat counties and groups where they are talking about now the need to support law enforcement more, not less. They are talking about how they want their freedoms protected. They believe that parents should be encouraged to be as involved as they can and want to be with the upbringing of their child. And when Democrats are saying, well, if you want to be that involved, you should just homeschool your kid, that's really turning off the Democrats as it's turning off the Republicans. From one issue to the next, Democrats at all levels of government with their one-party rule are squandering their power, where Democrats feel like this isn't the same party they registered to. Independents feel like they have a responsibility to help make sure that the pendulum swings. And we're seeing Republicans not just more fired up than Democrats, but more fired up than ever to do their part to make sure that there's balance of power after this November's election.
Yeah, that was definitely Governor McAuliffe really, blew it right there. But it was obvious, I always call it like the Freudian slip, the slip of the tongue. This is what they think. This is what the left believes, this leftist Marxist Democrat that we're seeing give rise to. That's why we're seeing our cities fall apart. I wanted to give you a moment before I let you go. Well, first of all, tell everybody what you're going to be doing, what New Yorkers that are listening to this would need to do in order to get more involved with the Republican Party and the governor's race, and what can be done, where they can go to read the latest on maybe where you're going to appear, and also any words that you'd like to say to the NYPD, because I'm sure right now is a very, very difficult time. It's been a very, very difficult last few years. And when you lose an officer, I don't think there can be anything more devastating for the families of the NYPD than when you lose somebody actually out in the field and out working, protecting the community.
I'm saddened that this is happening so often. We're hearing of law enforcement attacked. It almost feels like every day. We're hearing of law enforcement losing their lives while doing their job. It feels like almost daily or weekly. This isn't just some isolated incident where we're all coming together. People are angry. I'm angry because this is a direct result of policies collectively that have come from government eroding our streets and turning them over to criminals. I was raised in a law enforcement household here in New York. I back the blue unapologetically. I want to support them more, not less. I want to do my part. That would start day one as governor. I have the back of and by the way, not just me. I have found that the masses have the backs of NYPD and all of their officers and officer families. And even though morale is low and retirement packets are surging and suicides are increasing and the violence is on the rise, there's a whole lot of us motivated to turn this around. As far as my campaign, we announced at zeldinfornewyork.com, and anyone can go there, sign up to volunteer, donate $5 or more. We're on social media all across different platforms so people can follow us and get engaged in the conversation there as well. Get out, volunteer, get active, make sure not just you're voting, but other people who sit on the sidelines who feel like their vote does not matter because somebody else decides who gets elected. I would tell them, one, the reason why other people are deciding is because you're not voting. And secondly, it's not just your right to vote, it is your duty to vote. It is your obligation to vote. We have to, in all 50 states, anyone who's paying attention to this, wherever you are, whether it's a federal race or it's a local race, everybody not only needs to be involved November 8, 2022, everybody needs to be involved today, doing our part every moment of every day with every opportunity, all in everywhere. We are one team, top down, bottom up, across America, fighting for our country. And we have to ensure that in this battle for the heart and soul of our country, the heart and soul for our states and our local community, that our fight for freedom wins, our fight to reverse the attacks on wallets win, our fight for common sense and competency rules the day this November.
Wow, I couldn't have said that any better. That's very true. And for everyone out there, it is about our local and state levels. We can't just be thinking about, the federal level. No, we have to start at home in our local communities, knowing who our lawmakers are, supporting the lawmakers that are doing the job that they need to be doing to represent all of us in Washington, D.C. And you certainly are doing that, Congressman. I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show.
It's great to be on with you again, Sarah, and thank you for doing what you do. I really wish that everyone in the media and journalism followed your model of aggressively pursuing facts and calling a spade a spade.
Oh, hey, thank you. It was great having Congressman Zeldin on. I know you all were probably moved by what he had to say and want to keep up on the election, even if you're not New Yorkers. Because, I mean, I think the country was riveted with Virginia. I think we're going to be riveted with what happens in New York. And I promise you, I'm going to be bringing him back on. But before I get to the rest of this podcast, I want to talk to you a little bit about the stock market. Are you guys not just cringing right now? Because I sure am. Every time I see my husband, I'm like, what is going on with the stock market? No, wait, don't tell me. I don't want to know, because it's terrible. It's going up and down. And why? Because we have President Biden in office, and he is a complete nincompoop. And so it's volatile, and it's going to be volatile for a few more years. I really believe that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about universal coin and bullion. They are now offering, and I think they're a great company. I'm so grateful that they sponsor this show. And they're offering a 1 ounce pure silver tribute coin. It's featuring America's 45th president. You know who he is. I know who he is. I've interviewed him many times. He is wonderful, Donald J. Trump. And they're going to do it at their cost. You'll get a pure 1 ounce silver coin honoring former President Trump at the same price Universal Coin buys it from their vendors. Throughout history, silver and gold have been a hedge against inflation and a guaranteed asset you can turn to when times are uncertain. And with Biden and Harris in office, if we can find them, the uncertainty seems like it's getting worse. Diversify your portfolio and add silver, a pure silver Trump coin, to your investments now. And the postage is free, guys. Call Universal Coin at 1-800-UCB-GOLD. That's 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Their professional staff, led by America's gold expert, Dr. Mike Fulgence, are waiting for you to call at 1-800-UCB-GOLD to get your pure silver President Trump tribute coin at dealer's cost. Oh my gosh. Okay. I just got to jump right into this, because this is just so freaking infuriating. I want to play the CDC director for you, and I want you to be thinking about what you would say to her if you were there.
And what we really are working to do is pivot the language to make sure that everybody is as up to date with their COVID-19 vaccines as they personally should be based on when they got their last vaccine. So importantly, right now, we're pivoting our language. We really want to make sure people are up to date. That means if you recently got your second dose, you're not eligible for a booster, you're up to date. If you are eligible for a booster and you haven't gotten it, you're not up to date, and you need to get your booster in order to be up to date.
Oh my gosh. I can't even take it, right? I can't even take it. First of all, we're pivoting, and I love this. I'm looking at the townhall.com responses to her pivoting, Walensky's pivoting statements here from the CDC. And there's a guy that literally the very first comment under townhall.com's Twitter feed is a guy flipping two birds off at the CDC. That's exactly how I feel. And then Will Smith meme saying, that's some funny shit. I think I could say that here. It's a podcast. So I got to tell you, I want you to think of the hypocrisy and the insanity here. How many freaking booster shots is it going to require? I mean, they're not working. We saw that with Omicron. I mean, if it works in reducing the veracity of the virus if what they're saying is true. Now, I did not have the Pfizer or Moderna. I had the Johnson & Johnson. And I got to tell you from personal experience, the second round with Omicron, I didn't even get it. And my husband did. And he ended up, he had the double shots or whatever that was. But I've just, I didn't even get it. I don't know why. I'm not a scientist. I can't figure this out. I didn't get the Omicron. I was all around it. I was up in it. And I took those tests over and over and over. Negative at the doctor's office. Marty, on the other hand, wow. He was like sniffles and sneezing, but he was still okay compared to I'm not saying that this isn't real. I'm just saying they are so confusing. Dr. Fauci, Walensky, all of these folks, they have really politicized COVID, and they have made it almost impossible for us to understand what's going on. Delta variant, Omicron, new variants, boosters. I'm just really, really tired of it, as are you, America? And I just want someone to speak to us clearly, to stop BSing us, to lay it all out so that we can heal as a nation and move forward and know what we're supposed to do. Because right now, I feel like there is like I said, we've got the nincompoop running the country right now. And I feel like he's established an army of nincompoops below that want us to listen to them. And honestly, I'm just gonna follow my gut and do the right thing, as I know you will too. Interesting that they don't mandate the vaccine for the people crossing the border. Interesting that they don't test the people crossing the border. They're putting them on planes with warrants, sending them all across the United States. Interesting that is kind of off limits, that Dr. Fauci says that's a different situation. Those are people from all over the world. I don't think it's a different situation. I think the situation that we're seeing is very clear. There is a double standard. There is something going on. These people don't know what they're doing. We need to hold them accountable, and they need to give us some straight answers. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I love having you on. I love reading your reviews. Thank you for all the great reviews we have on this podcast. Thank you for being such loyal listeners. And by the way, like I've said before, put your ideas there. I read your reviews. I read your ideas. I read your Twitter feeds. I read Instagram, all of the responses that you give me, and I use those to kind of develop the story and bring guests on. So we're going to keep a close eye on Congressman Lee Zeldin. Once again, thank you, Congressman Zeldin, for being on the show. We wish you all the best of luck in New York with your gubernatorial race, and we welcome you back on. Remember, folks, go to SaraACarter.com. That is SaraACarter.com to get all the links to my social media and the latest news stories, and it's there where you can sign up for our email list. Again, thank you. God bless you. God bless America, and God bless the great state of Texas. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. Can you share a little bit with the audience about your father, Dan Weber, and how he founded AMAC and why?
My father formed AMAC after he recognized that the AARP really was not representing his values, and those values were really faith, family, and freedom. And my father believed in America's greatness. He believed that there was what he described as a cultural shift occurring in our country. He thought that the very, very foundation, the Constitution, was being disregarded. And we saw that the power of government was growing and individual freedoms were diminishing, were being threatened. And to get more specific was in 2006 when he said to me that he was canceling his AARP membership. And I said to my father, why would you do that? And he said, well, they've just named Harry Belafonte Man of the Year. And he went on to say that Harry Belafonte had commented to Hugo Chavez saying that George W. Bush was the greatest terrorist threat in America. And my father said something is wrong with that. So he saw the AARP make this sharp left turn. And that was when he said, let's form AMAC. And I said, let's do it.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. You know, for more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.